Okay, this is the lecture for Lesson 9, just on the vocabulary on this page and on how to use charcoal. Now there's 5 separate steps here on how to use charcoal, and I'll be going right along from number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now what I'm going to do in order to demonstrate that to you is I'm going to actually redraw this half of this picture over here that you see on your facing page. Okay, the first thing we want to talk about is the materials. So I'm going to lay this little piece of paper on here. And we have our vine charcoal. Sometimes, well, this is actually a burnt willow stick, so sometimes it's referred to as willow vine charcoal or just willow charcoal. So you can use any of those terms interchangeably as you want. I actually have a larger piece here that I will probably be using today. They do come in a soft, medium, and hard. Although you see this piece of willow here is slightly bigger than what you're buying, but they work all the same. The next thing you have is the compressed charcoal, and your compressed charcoal may look like this and come in this package. Or you may have some compressed charcoal that looks like this. Next you have your white pastel, which the white pastel that I recommend for this class is this highly pigmented Rembrandt white pastel right here. Then you have what's known as a blending stump, which is on your vocabulary. And a blending stump, and I'll show you how to use that, is actually a tightly woven paper, and this is used for all dry media. Then you have what's called a loosely rolled tortillon, which is the bottom vocabulary term here, which is actually used for mostly charcoal. Now these pieces here are not commercial. This one is. These two are actually handmade. Now traditionally what you would do is make these by loosely rolling them. You can see how they're hollow in the middle. And then you have to use tape to hold them shut. Now usually you would make these out of the paper that you're actually drawing with. And then they'll actually have the same kind of resistance and absorbency of what you're working on. Okay, so we've covered blending stump and tortillon. So now I'm going to move these things out of the way here. Okay, the first thing in under charcoal here, where it says right here, the entire area of your drawing should have a smooth, even tone of gray before you begin. Now, the even tone of gray would be made with your vine charcoal. Now, I already took up some time in order to smooth out some of this already. Now, what you have is a this is the first layer I put on, and this is the second, and then I smoothed them out and then put another layer on. And I just did this in stages just so you could see how this looks. Now most students don't take enough time to do this correctly, and so if you don't, you'll end up with a lot of streaks. And that's going to be very distracting for you. And so what you want to do is you want to get it very smooth. Now you might, you'll have either a tissue or a white cloth, like I have a white cloth here, and I'm going to use that to smooth it out. And you see how nicely this smooths out. And this is on your regular drawing paper that this is done. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little test. So the first thing we're going to do is take the vine charcoal and draw a line over here, just to see how these work. The next thing, I'm going to use this charcoal, this compressed charcoal, and I'm using it on its side. You'll notice this piece is about this big. Now, when using charcoal, it's best to draw in tones. In other words, instead of drawing it in a linear way like this, you actually would use it to draw tonal areas, which is something you can't really do with a pencil as easily. Okay, now if I want to draw in a linear way with this, I have it on its end. So now I have a solid vine charcoal, a tone of compressed, and a solid compressed, and then here I can put on a tone of white, or solid white. Now basically what you have here, this is about the range or all the limits that you have of this material. Now if I was to take a, let's take a tortillon and start at the bottom here. Now if you watch my finger, you notice how easily the line is removed just with my finger when I'm using vine charcoal. That I cannot do that with the compressed charcoal or with the, whoops, well I gotta use a cleaner finger here. The white tone comes off a little bit, but the solid white really doesn't come off. So now let's see what happens if I use a tortillon, and that takes everything off. And here it's a blender, but you see now I don't have it on my fingers, I've got it on this. So this is pretty close to your finger. And again, this is the tortillon. Now if I was to use the blending stump, and I'll go to the dark edge here, this one's already been used over here. This one's a lot stiffer, so see what happens here is, you'll notice how it makes lines, and it's not as easy to blend softly with a blending stump on charcoal. Now the definition for this is dry media, not necessarily charcoal, and that's why I'm showing you the difference. In some cases, depending on your technique, it could be to your advantage, but you need to be aware of that. You notice that there's just a little slight difference here on the whites, but there's a lot more difference on the blacks when using the blending stump. Okay, now we're going to get into our favorite erasers here, and here is and how do you get rid of these? Well, again, if I was to run my finger across here, you notice that I don't get rid of very much. On the vine charcoal I do. This is the gum eraser. Then I have the rubber. I've got my kneaded eraser. And the vinyl eraser. Now, most of the time, you'll find the gum eraser to give a few more crumbs off. It didn't give off as many today. I did get quite a bit of residue off the rubber. No residue off the kneaded eraser, as I never do, but I do get quite a bit off of the plastic eraser. Now, the thing is here is that is for you to experiment with these, and basically I find the gum eraser to not be very good eraser for this type of work at all. Sometimes you can use this type of eraser for that, but it does leave and when you get this kind of material and from this rubber and from the gum and from the plastic coming off on this kind of paper, when you're drawing like this, it's not a very good idea. You're going to end up with a bigger mess than you would like. This is really the best one for that. And if you notice, and if you have a clean area, and you know, this eraser is very good for removing quite a bit of, especially the vine charcoal. Okay. Okay, now we're going to start, and we're going to do this drawing here. And what it says here on number 2, right here, is block out your areas of the drawing with willow vine charcoal. Now, in this instance, I used both words, but you can use one or the other. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, well, I'll draw this in first. Now, if you'll notice, this has a ball on the top. And it's actually a cylinder that this ball is sitting on. And then the cylinder is actually sitting on a rectangular platform, which I'll just draw in here. Now, on top of the platform, if you're looking at the picture, there's a black cloth sitting on top of the platform, and the platform is actually white, and the cloth is black. Now you notice what I'm doing right here. Now you remember from the last lesson we talked about those stripes, remember, and cross contour drawing. So what I'm actually going to show you today is how, when you're working in this new section here, because now section 9 or section 3 and lesson 9 is about the illusion of light. So we moved into a whole different realm now, and we're now going to use the last section's composition elements of cross contour drawing and show how to use that when you use an illusion of light. So the last thing before we start on that we have to put in is this cloth that you'll notice is on top of that. Now this is called blocking in. Now blocking in, as I described, and we'll be describing a lot of that in this particular class lesson, because this is all about how to make these objects in a thumbnail sketch very simple. So in other words, you're trying to really simplify the shapes so that you can draw them more easily. So I'm merely kind of copying what's in that picture, that's something else that I drew from life. So I'm just kind of redoing that. And I'm almost done here, and then I have to explain one other thing. Okay, you'll notice if you look at that picture how I described folds, and they all seem to stop right here, and I actually drew the object under the fabric first. And remember last time I told you about drawing through an object when drawing those stripes. Well, this is similar, but the first thing that you need to know about now in section 3 is that if you have a flat plane like this is considered a flat plane. Now you notice it has the same tone all the way through. Now if I was to take that and fold it in half like this, and now if you notice when I turn this, you'll see how this plane is lighter than this one. Now watch, when I turn it this way, now this one is lighter than this one. There is no line in the middle. That's simply two different values of the same plane. That is called a plane break. And when you're dealing with illusion of light, those are very important. Now, that means it's very important right here, where this flat plane, and I'm going to draw the light source with an arrow and say the light is coming from up here. Okay? So I have every surface, this surface is getting hit by the light, and this surface is getting hit by the light. So you have to be very conscious of where the light is coming from, and when you have an object with a 90-degree turn in it, that's where you're going to have a plane break. So now you go to number 3 on your page, and it says, after blocking out all your areas of the drawing with the vine charcoal, this rubs off easily to allow for you to make changes. So if you notice here, if I decided I didn't like this, look how easily I can rub that off, and I could just simply, change it to whatever I want to do with it. See, so that's why you use the vine charcoal. Do not use compressed charcoal to draw this, because it's almost, as you can remember from over here, it's impossible to get this stuff off of here, and you'll just have a very discouraging mess. Okay, so the next, number 3, is apply a middle value of white to all the lighted areas. This is the middle value here of white. This is the solid. So if you look at your picture again, I had a white ball here, so I'm going to put that middle value of white in the ball. The ball is white. Okay, the cylinder was white. If you look in your picture, so I'm just going to make it white. Not solid white, and I'm using the side of this. Now the stand, model stand was white. or whatever that thing was this was sitting on. Now you notice that first of all, he says, well, first of all, what happened here was the white things are white. Now I'm going to make the black things black. Then I'm going to work on the plane breaks. Okay. So I'm using now number 4, which says a middle value of black to the other areas. Now, one thing I'm doing here that's very subtle is that while I'm applying this black to all these areas, I'm very subtly careful that, you know, I had some blocked out outlines in there of where these folds were. So you notice what I'm doing is I'm just slightly darkening those edges also so that I can remember where these things were. See how these kind of start to stick out a little bit. And the top is black. But you notice how right away what I'm doing is I'm not making it all the same black. And this thing down here was black. This fabric. Okay, so that's number 4. Now you notice right away the really important thing here with this kind of work is that you define the values of the different areas first. Then you go in and do the plane breaks. So let's do the plane break, and I'll stay with my black. This is what they call a down plane because the light is coming from here. So you notice that now that even though I have this, they're both black, they are not the same black. This black is darker because it's a down plane. If I did the same thing with the white,